We will get started, and I would love to introduce Kenrick Brown from the West Region, who is going to talk a little bit about FADE plans.
Awesome. Thank you, Elisa. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kenrick Brown. I am the West Region Abuse, Neglect, and Human Rights Committee Liaison. And this afternoon, I wish to take a few minutes of your time to discuss FADE plans. During the last West Region HRC Committee meeting, the topic of FADE plans were highlighted as an ongoing concern. This concern is not specific to the West Region or to the HRC Committee. This is a statewide concern that impacts the Program Review Committee, PRC, and Utilization Review, URR, as well. Specific to the West Region HRC Committee, which meets monthly and reviews around 15 packets on average, about half of the packets reviewed do not list an effective FADE plan. An effective plan to fade the restrictive, intrusive, or aversive intervention. Many of the packets reviewed list as their fading plan. Teams will consider removing restrictive when criteria is met, which is not an adequate wording. The team should actually begin moving forward with the removal fade plan once criteria is met. Additionally, packets are submitted listing that due to an identified factor, the team do not believe fading is possible. Listing an actual fade plan is a requirement of the department. A fade plan does not mean that an immediate discontinuation, but a slight decrease in incremental steps once the behavioral criteria is met. So I'm here to reinforce the need of having an effective fading plan documented when submitting a packet for review by any of the committees. One way the HRC committee advocates for individuals served is by ensuring behavioral supports are utilized in the least restrictive manner. One important method to ensuring restrictive, intrusive, or aversive interventions are not used in excess is through the development and implementation of a fading plan. So FADE plans must be concrete and actionable once a criteria has been met. FADE plans are developed at the onset of applying the restrictive, intrusive, or aversive procedure. We must always be planning the fade from the moment we start a restrictive, intrusive, or aversive procedure. And understanding the role of a FADE plan, how to document and implement a successful FADE plan is crucial for providers to consider when determining the best intervention method needed. This understanding is reflected by the FADE listed in the packets submitted for review. A FADE plan presentation was developed by two behaviorists from a private provider with the support from the PRC and also the HRC liaisons. This information was presented at the Behavioral Health Quarterly meeting, which was held July of last year. The presentation and PowerPoint is available on our website, which I will provide the link in the chat so that there's easy access to review the information. And what I'm asking is that you please share with staff and ask them to take some time to review this valuable tool as they develop creative and effective FADE plans when submitting future packets for review. Thank you. So that is really the overview of the FADE plan information that I wanted to kind of share with everyone. And as I stated, I will be including the link to the FADE plan presentation and also FADE plan PowerPoint that is available and accessible on our website.
Thank you, Kenrick.
You're welcome.
Do we have any questions for Kenrick? And you can put your questions in the chat, or you can use the raise hand button. All right, and people are still joining, so the numbers are increasing, and we'll continue to move along with the agenda. I think I'm next up. I just wanted to talk a little bit about supportive housing. Most of you, we've had presentations at this forum previously. I know Steve Morris gave a great presentation a while back on the initial supportive housing developments that Favor had opened. And we continue to move forward in terms of the supportive housing developments. I think we're now up to 8 statewide and more in process, and that's very exciting. Been very well received as we've forums, as the commissioner and I have participated in forums with family members, as we've conducted the Fourth Tuesday forums. We continue to get a lot of interest and enthusiasm around supportive housing. What you may not realize is that expansion of supportive housing is one of the ARPA goals as well. And in addition to the project-based supportive housing that has been in development and continues to develop, we issued a notice of opportunity last month for a non-project-based supportive housing. And that is where an existing development in the community may have a certain number of units that are available. There may be individuals already living in the setting, or it may be a development that we have identified that currently no one supported by DDS is living in the development. But if there are a number of units that can be set aside, DDS has the ability to offer non-project-based RAP vouchers, and the notice of opportunity provided some funding to allow those non-project-based supportive housing developments to be put in place. We got a really nice response. Really exciting to see that that a number of providers expressed interest. We got a lot of questions, and we were able to award the first 3 non-project-based supportive housing developments. So I wanted to just make you aware that supportive housing is expanding, that we're looking at continuing the developments that have been underway. We have a number that are in the pipeline, but it takes about 2.5 years for a ground up development. By expanding to this option, it allows people to live in their communities of their choice. It's been number one question of families. What if there's not a supportive housing development in my general area? This will allow people to live in a complex in whatever location they choose to. And it matches those IHS supports, sometimes technology, possibly remote supports that we're going to talk a little bit about later on, with the non-project-based housing vouchers. And so it provides safe, affordable housing with those supports that an individual needs. So as those get underway, we will plan in a future leadership forum to talk about how those are going. We'll probably have some of the providers that have been awarded one of those non-project-based supportive housing opportunities. We'll give them the opportunity to share how that goes. And I just wanted to provide that update. I see there is something in the chat. Will there be any ARPA initiatives to develop supportive housing? So if you look at the DDS website, I believe under latest news, you would see the notice of opportunity that went out for the non-project-based supportive housing. That the period has ended, and so those awards have been made. We anticipate there will be additional opportunities, and so that's why I'm sharing this information. So so providers know that that is an additional option that's available for supportive housing, and to keep your eye out for future notices of opportunity. And are the 8 developments all DDS? So all of the project-based supportive housing developments that I referenced have a number of units that were set aside for people supported by DDS. And in that instance, there are the project-based rental assistance vouchers. So there's a process in terms of the housing end of it, but a certain number of units are set aside in the development. It can't be more than 25% of the units. In many cases, it's in larger developments, it's well below 25% of the units, but a certain number of units are set aside for people that are supported through DDS. And I think we have 5 that have opened where everyone's moved in at this point. Additional supportive housing developments are underway, and we're waiting to hear the applications are submitted by the developers, and that's through CHFA and Department of Housing. We're waiting to hear about this year's applicants that have been approved, but that will continue to happen. So the project-based supportive housing continues to happen. DDS is very excited, and I know a number of providers at this point have been involved in the project-based supportive housing. And then this notice of opportunity is in addition to that non-project based. And so, as I said, an existing development where a certain number of units may be set aside, and there are rental assistance vouchers that are available for that, and then the IHS supports in addition to that. Any other questions about that?
Deputy Commissioner, I would like to make one comment. Folks, we are aware there seems to be some sort of issue with the dds.ct.gov website currently. We're experiencing some sort of error in accessing any of the web pages, so we'll be working on troubleshooting that. If you are trying to access that link that was put in the chat by Kenrick Brown, just be aware that for the time being, it will not open.
Thank you, Gunnar. And as that's resolved, if it's resolved during the course of this meeting, we'll let you know. And if not, we can notify people when that's up and running. All right. I don't see any additional questions. So at this point, I will turn it over to Krista Ostaszewski, who is going to talk a little bit about final settings and the end of the public health emergency.
Great. Thank you, Elisa. Hi, everyone. I'm Krista Ostaszewski. I'm the Health Management Administrator at DDS over in Central Office. I oversee the Medicaid waivers and numerous other initiatives. So I'm really happy to be here and talk through 2 different items today. Unfortunately, some of what I was hoping to show is actually part of what's on the DDS website. And because the website is not working at the moment, we're just going to kind of work through this. And hopefully the website will work shortly, or we'll send around the information afterwards. So I'm going to start with talking a little bit about Appendix K and the end of the public health emergency. So as we communicated a little while ago, the federal government has confirmed that the end of the public health emergency is scheduled to end on May 11th. What does that mean for us? So as most everyone on this call is aware, we have been working under Appendix K flexibilities for quite some time now. CMS had allowed Appendix K to be utilized to provide waiver and supports and services in a more flexible manner to meet health and safety requirements during the pandemic. So there were numerous different flexibilities that were put into place under Appendix K that have really helped meet health and safety requirements, but also ensure that the individuals we support were still able to access services during the height of the pandemic. Since the pandemic has dissipated, simmered down a bit. I don't want to say ended. We have been working very hard, and providers have been working very hard to get back to a pre-pandemic state in terms of supports and services. But there are still a few flexibilities that are in place that we need to start unwinding. Essentially, all of our Appendix K flexibilities need to end 6 months after the public health emergency ends. So the public health emergency is scheduled to end on May 11th. We've got 6 months from May 11th to unwind all of our Appendix K flexibilities. So we are talking about essentially having to end Appendix K flexibilities by mid-November. So I am going to attempt to share a document that I'm going to go through very briefly that articulates all of the different Appendix K flexibilities that we've been working under and what needs to be rolled up by that mid-November date. In some cases, we've already amended our current waivers to require permanent authority and be able to provide the flexibility that we've been working under long-term. In some cases, we were not able to amend. What we wanted to do is really try and provide a clear and concise visual. So providers, staff know exactly what needs to happen in terms of unwinding the Appendix K flexibilities. So if you give me one moment, I'm going to attempt to share my screen and share that chart. Please note this chart has not been shared with providers yet. What I wanted to do is share it in this forum, get some feedback, and then if there were additional questions or edits that needed to be included in the document, I wanted to be able to provide that and then send it out to providers so it answers all of the questions that everyone has. Just give me a moment. I'm going to attempt to screen share. Apologies, this doesn't seem to be working the way I was hoping it would. Oh, here we go. Okay.
We can see it.
Can we see it? Can everyone see it?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Okay. So again, this document outlines the Appendix K temporary modification or flexibility that we've been able to work under, right? The type of service, the flexibility that was put into place, who's able to provide that certain service, and the provider type, that can provide the service, and then who can provide the service. The last column on the right are the steps to unwind due to the end of the public health emergency. So this is the column that's going to identify if the flexibility can stay in place permanently or if it has to be removed because of the Appendix K ending. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but I will show them on the screen. I just, again, wanted to make sure providers had an opportunity to take a look at it, to ask questions, and to request clarity if there needed to be. And then again, the intent is after this meeting to send this document around so it can be used as a reference point. And then before I go through this, I also just wanted to again reiterate, we know many providers have been working furiously to go back to pre-pandemic service delivery, right? So if services were being provided virtually, we know there's been a lot of work being done to make sure those services have gone back to being face-to-face. We know that there have been many efforts on many different levels. So in many cases, supports and services may not be provided in the flexibility that's identified here currently, right? The providers may have already worked to go back to sort of pre-pandemic service delivery. But again, this is just an opportunity to make sure we're doing our due diligence, that staff and that providers understand what needs to be removed or what needs to go back to pre-pandemic times because of the public health emergency ending. So for instance, the first service here is IHS. Under Appendix K, we were able to temporarily provide the service out of state Lots of different criteria associated with all of these different flexibilities. So, you know, obviously this chart is attempting to summarize things. So if there's additional questions or clarity that's needed, just let us know. IHS was also able to be provided in a facility or a small group. And then it was also able to be provided virtually through electronic face-to-face means. We were also able to provide IHS with a personal care or assistance component associated with it. So what do we have to do to the IHS services before mid-November, right? So services must return to pre-pandemic service delivery. However, IHS may continue to be provided virtually or through electronic face-to-face means as articulated in the DDS waivers. So what this means is DDS has permanent authority to allow for IHS to be provided virtually or through electronic face-to-face means. So we can continue this component of IHS after the public health emergency ends, but all other components of flexibility do need to end by mid-November. I'll go through one other item and then again show all of the other pieces on the screen and then take questions, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Krista,
So
before you go ahead, Gunnar.
Krista, would you mind just zooming in on the document a little bit if you could?
Yeah, absolutely. I am working with one screen, so if there's anything that I need to do to sort of make it a little bit more legible, please let me know. I'm having a hard time. Usually it gives me the option of zooming in and it's not at the moment. Hold on one moment. I'm going to zoom this way.
And viewers can control the size of it on their own screen as well.
Thank you. Oop, that's probably a little too much. I'll give this one more whirl and then, is that a little better?
Yes.
I think it is.
Thanks, everyone. All right, I'm going to go through one more line here, and then I will briefly show all of the different components of this chart, and then we can take some questions and move on to the next section. Again, providers don't have this chart as of yet. We wanted an opportunity to talk through it here if there needed to be any additional components or clarifications within the document before sending it out to all providers. So just one more modification that we can review. The service is personal supports. What modifications or temporary modifications were allowed under Appendix K? The service was able to be provided out of state. We were able to temporarily provide the service in a group or through an electronic face-to-face means. We were also able to provide a component of personal care that could be done through verbal cues or prompts. So what has to change? Due to the public health emergency ending, services must return to pre-pandemic levels. So that means DDS does not have permanent authority to provide this service electronically. So if the service is currently being provided through electronic means, that is going to have to end before mid-November. Okay, because the chart doesn't specify that it is allowable under permanent authority, that means it is not, and we cannot continue after mid-November. So I'm just going to keep scrolling through. I'm not going to go through all of these because I know time is limited. We've got some flexibility under behavioral support services. We have some flexibility under individualized day. For those that keep up on things, we did recently amend the waivers to include individualized day being provided virtually. So that is now allowed under permanent authority and can continue after mid-November. I'm going to go to the next page. SEI, group day support, senior supports, group supported employment, transitional employment supports, and then pre-voc. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take some questions. I don't see anything. Oh, can I make the screen larger? Sorry about that. Yes, I think I helped a little bit. Under IHS, will IHS 2 and 3 remain an option moving forward? I am not sure what 2 and 3 references, and I don't want to speak inaccurately about that. So that's something, George, that I can, I was going to say, if you could pop on, that would be great.
Yeah.
Or I can email you separately to get more information. Yeah.
No problem. So IHS 2 and 3 are the options to provide group supports in IHS. So you can work with 2 individuals and 1 staff, 3 individuals and 1 staff.
Oh, got it. I apologize. It wasn't connecting, but
That's okay.
I hear exactly what you're talking about now. So I think in those situations, that's something that we'll probably have to take a look at specifically with the provider. IHS is an individualized support, but there are some cluster opportunities that are available. So we just have to take a look at what was authorized and make sure that it's being provided appropriately. So I know that isn't a completely straightforward answer, but in some situations, there are some arrangements, cluster arrangements that are allowable. I just want to make sure that that is done under permanent authority and wasn't done under the Appendix K flexibilities. So in those specific situations, George, I would suggest going through the region, through the resource management piece, or we can take a look at that separately.
Okay. Todd did say that that was approved prior to COVID, so I just wanted to confirm to make sure that was still an option because it is beneficial for providers and individuals. So
yeah,
like
I believe there definitely were some arrangements that were approved prior to COVID. And I believe under sort of the cluster setting, that is completely appropriate. And we do have permanent authority to do that. I just want to make sure that that was exactly what was approved from a provider specific situation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Susan is asking where we can receive the chart. So that is something that I have not yet sent out to providers. It will go to providers after this meeting. I wanted an opportunity to show the chart, make sure people could provide feedback, and I can make edits with additional questions that may come in. So providers will have the chart hopefully by the end of the week, if not the beginning of next week. Tanya is asking, how many providers billing for virtual or group IHS since it's not captured in EVV? How are providers billing for virtual or group IHS? So I will take that back to our EVV team. I do believe that there are some discussions going on specifically around that. And I don't have an answer for you right now, and I don't want to state something that's inaccurate. I do know it is something that we're working on. So thank you, Tanya. Any other questions, feedback? Hopefully that chart is helpful. I know I've received questions from providers on this topic prior, so I wanted to make sure to give everyone a sort of a visual aid. It is something that hopefully will be helpful. But again, we know there are always unique circumstances and situations. So if you have a situation that doesn't neatly fit under that chart, please feel free to reach out to me, reach out to the regions. We'll work with you to address that. Okay, why don't we jump into the next topic? Is that okay?
There is another comment. I think it's somebody responding to Tanya's question.
So sorry, I wasn't on before, but I can comment on the group IHS for sure.
That would be great, Nick. I didn't want to say too much and state something inaccurately. I was going to bring it back, but if you're here to talk through it, that would be great.
Yeah, so we're actively working on a test for group IHS in EVV. The first thing we had to do was submit a change order through Sandata. They recently implemented the structure for that change order, which will allow group IHS in the system. And now we're testing the transfer of all the authorizations and placements. As many of you know, the group IHS authorizations go back to the original IHS authorization. So you have one IHS authorization to potentially 1, 2, or 3 placements, a singular IHS placement, a 2-to-1 placement, or a 3-to-1 placement. And the intricacies of that 1-to-1, 2-to-1, and 3-to-1 relationship is being tested in the files we're sending over. So our expectation, so we tested the first half of the files last week. We tested sending over that type of data to see if it will work when we send all the data. We're now testing what it looks like when someone ends their IHS service to make sure that's working properly. And then we do expect to have a mass upload into the system, which will turn group services online for everyone. On the EVV side, as people mentioned in the chat, you still can enter the group services in WebRes Day, but we obviously want to work towards a system where EVV is mirroring WebRes Day, and as the data flows from EVV to WebRes Day, it's accurate and is following what is actually entered in the homes.
Thank you, Nick. Do you want to take I see that there's another billing question around DSO. You want to respond to that as well?
I actually
Yeah.
just sent a response via the chat. I don't know, Nick, if you have additional information. It was about claiming DSO by unit versus per hour or versus day. And I didn't think that was related to Appendix K in any way, shape, or form. But
yeah, the general answer is currently everyone is on the hourly version. Our plan currently is to stay on the hourly version, but we know that providers, some providers like the day version, and it is something on our radar to continue to explore. The hourly version has allowed us certain flexibilities that we've extended to the providers that other agencies haven't. And so at this point in time, we do expect to stay at the hourly version, but we know that providers want the daily version, and it is on our radar.
thanks, Nick. Okay, we are going to change gears and talk a little bit about final settings. Unfortunately, I was hoping to pull up the provider memo that went out relatively recently that talked a little bit about the corrective action plan that Connecticut received approval from CMS on, and the residential agreement template that was provided to providers interested in making improvements to their agreement to articulate and fit the requirements of final settings. I am unable to pull up those documents at the moment because of the technical issues we're experiencing. So I am essentially going to talk it through very quickly. And then what we can do is send a little note around just to make sure that providers received the memo, received the template, and then also had an opportunity to take a look at it and ask questions. I did receive a few questions based on the memo and have been working with some providers, but again, want to make sure that providers know that we're here to sort of assist and work through questions and concerns and feedback on the topic. For those that were not aware, we did receive a corrective action plan in Connecticut that was approved. A corrective action plan in the context of the final settings rule means that some of the final settings criteria that was required for compliance the middle of March has been extended. The compliance date has now been extended in Connecticut for some of the final settings criteria based on some of sort of the challenges that Connecticut as a state has been experiencing. CMS allowed states to apply for a corrective action plan that allowed for compliance extension dates based on, again, challenges that states were experiencing. So the workforce crisis was probably the biggest issue that was talked about nationally on these final settings calls that we've been participating in. Obviously, without the appropriate number of staff available to provide supports in the manner that individuals would like, it makes final settings requirements challenging. So this was the final set. So CMS allowed states to apply for a corrective action plan in which compliance requirements were able to be extended. The corrective action plan that Connecticut has received approval on essentially extends the final settings, some final settings criteria to February 2024. So it essentially gave us almost a full additional year to work through final settings compliance requirements. And like Connecticut and DDS has been saying all along with the final settings discussion, we feel very confident that Connecticut is in compliance with final settings, but there is always an opportunity to make improvements. And that is something we want to continually have discussions about and continually monitor. Final settings compliance is incredibly important because at the end of the day, it means the individuals we support have access to the community, are integrated into the community, have the ability and the choice to be independent and the ability to make their own choices. And that's what we want. So the corrective action plan, everyone should have received the link and a copy of the corrective action plan that articulates, what extensions the Connecticut has received. One of the big components of final settings that we've received questions on was the lease or lease-like agreement. So after many months of review and improvement and discussions, we finally were able to issue a lease template or a lease-like agreement template to providers to take a look at an opportunity for a lease or a lease-like agreement that fits all of the compliance requirements of final settings. It is a pretty lengthy document. It includes lots of details, but again, we wanted to make this document as helpful as possible to providers. We wanted to make sure that policy citations were included. We wanted to make sure it was as explicit as possible. We know that providers have leases and lease-like agreements. This template should be used as an opportunity to make improvements. So the template makes it very clear that it's not something that all providers have to adopt verbatim, but it is something that providers should use as a reference when they're making improvements to their agreement. The one piece that I do want to specifically articulate as an important component of the lease or lease-like agreement is the appeal process. CMS made it very clear that there must be an appeal process articulated in the lease or the lease-like agreement. Now, DDS's transfer and discharge process already allows for an appeal process. The family can go through a PAR. The family can go to Superior Court. So those are two appeal opportunities that every individual has the ability to utilize if they were going to be transferred or discharged. DDS believes that that covers the appeal requirements that CMS has articulated within the lease or lease-like agreement requirements. So you will see in the template that there is a large section around appeals. That process that's articulated there reflects the transfer and discharge process. There is a discussion about some pre-meetings that can occur and discussions that can happen to attempt to mediate concerns or challenges that would lead to a transfer or a discharge. But overall, the transfer and discharge process, because it includes those two components of appeals, covers the requirement around making sure that individuals who have a lease or a lease-like agreement funded through Medicaid have two options for appeals. So again, I am so sorry I'm not able to pull up the document and sort of reference it as we're having this conversation, but I'm hopeful that most providers have seen the document and have referenced the document. We'll make sure to send the link around when everything is working again. As with all things final settings, we will continue to have conversations about final settings. We will continue to provide you information about final settings, and we will continue to do some ongoing monitoring related to final settings through all of our different quality controls. So this is not the last. We're going to be talking about final settings. And again, if there's questions, concerns, or any feedback related to final settings that can be helpful, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Happy to take questions. I am reading a question from Terry. Would you please elaborate on the CRS lease-like like requirement as it relates to CRS leases with non-agency entities. So Terry, I think the piece here that I'm interested about is non-agency entities. Because when I think about non-agency entities in a CRS, if we're talking about a private lease or a family that has a lease with a landlord outside of a DDS specific qualified provider, that is a landlord-tenant lease directly, and that is not something that we would be overseeing. I hope that answers the question.
Krista, is it okay if I ask clarifying questions?
Absolutely, yes, happy to.
And thanks for your concern. So we do support a number of individuals in their CRS arrangements, which they have direct leases with the owner of the home. They are parties that traditionally lease out to everybody, and they sign the leases are with those arrangements, and I'm not looking at changing those, but it's why the requirement for a separate lease-like agreement when there already is a lease agreement with the owner itself.
Yeah, Terry, thank you for that clarification. That's incredibly helpful, and that was articulated incredibly clearly, so I appreciate that. If you have an individual who has a lease already, right? So a lease with a landlord, which is what I'm hearing you say, right? And it is not through a qualified provider. It's an individual who has a lease with a traditional landlord that is already required to fit landlord-tenant law, which is part of the requirement with CMS. So what that means, Terry, is we should not be touching those agreements. That's between the individual and the landlord. It is a landlord-tenant lease, and that is, in the nature of the lease itself, falls under landlord-tenant law. Does that answer your question?
Well, unfortunately, Krista, I was kicked out and I didn't hear your answer.
Oh.
Literally as soon as you started answering it, I lost connectivity or something. I don't know. Could you repeat? My apologies.
Yeah, no problem at all. It figures, right? Technology. So I was first complimenting you on your question and how clearly it was articulated, which helps me be clear in my answer, Terry. So what I hear you say is that we're really talking about leases between an individual and a landlord, not a provider. And because that is a lease between an individual and a landlord, it falls under landlord-tenant law and is not something that DDS or that the qualified provider will need to amend to meet the final settings requirements. It's already an agreement that falls under landlord-tenant law, and therefore it already meets the requirements of final settings. So that is not something that we would need to amend because it's between the individual and the landlord directly.
Great.
The template that we sent out really was for qualified providers that provide a residential setting in which the individual lives. So it's really when the qualified provider is the landlord. So Tanya, I think that's probably responsive to your question specifically.
Yes. Thank you, Krista.
Absolutely. Thank you, Terry. Sorry about your technical issues. Any other questions on this? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, any questions or comments that may come up on any topic, Appendix K, final settings, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to assist in any way that I can. Thank you.
Thanks, Krista, and thanks for your work on this, your ongoing work on both of these topics, and the very nice, clear presentation. Much appreciated. All right, our next topic I'm very excited about, and I think will be of great interest. Can I welcome Norman, John, and David? Our resource administrators are going to talk a little bit about the ARPA transformational plans and provide an update. And I don't know who is going to kick us off.
I'd be happy to go first.
Norman, welcome, Norman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Norman Rio, and I am the Resource Administrator in the North Region. And I'd like to provide an overview today of the transformation plans that we've received in the North Region. I am going to share my screen. There's 7 areas that I'd like to update everyone on. You give me just a moment.
We can see it, Norman.
Great. Great. Okay, so supporting transformation to empower people, the North Region updates as of today. There are 7 areas I'd like to share. The North Region received a total of 5 transformation plans for phase 1, 4 plans for residential settings, and 1 plan for day services. To date, 2 residential plans have received a conditional approval, and the other 3 plans with some minor revision should be finalized by the end of April. Number 2, the residential plans outline people moving from a CLA or CRS to a less restrictive setting. All plans focus on the use of assistive technology with IHS staff in their new home, such as supportive housing developments or other apartment settings. Each residential plan submitted is requesting incentives for between 3 to 8 people, and the step placement incentive is $33,500 per person. So the incentive range for these plans is between $100,000 and $268,000. Number 3, each agency has presented a variety of options for the CLA or CRS vacancies that are created when someone transitions to IHS, including a reduction of census in the former group home, converting the opening to a respite bed to assist the regions with emergencies, or backfilling from the current wait list. Preparing people to live in a less restrictive environment is also a theme emerging in the plans that were submitted. For example, one agency has identified a current 3-bed CLA as a transition home for people to move to, work on specific goals to develop greater independence, then transition to the IHS service. A focus on assistive technology and slow incremental reduction of staffing is part of this step in the transformation process. The provider will backfill this CLA with other people who desire to live in a less restricted environment and require extra support or targeted strategies to further develop their independent living skills. This ties to what Elisa was talking about earlier. Number 5, we have one provider who has tied their transformation plan to the recent statewide NOO for development of non-project-based supportive housing. This provider recently received official notice of the award and now can use the 2 ARPA initiatives concurrently. An additional notice of opportunity may be circulated next year, so keep this in mind if you're interested in submitting a res plan for phase 2. Number 6, several residential plans also include pursuit of the statewide assistive technology NOO for implementation of systems such as Grand Care in their current 24-hour settings and in the new IHS settings that they're developing. The goals for introducing assistive technology is to reduce dependence on direct support staffing and foster greater independence for people receiving services. And number 7 covers the day plan that's currently under review. The day service transformation plan we've received is focused on a multi-pronged approach to assist people obtain independent competitive employment. The plan includes a continuation of an already established project search program, looking to incentivize offers of employment upon completion of project search. Also includes development of a second internship program, similar to project search, utilizing the DDS transition services model as a stepping stone to independent employment. In this new hybrid model, people will rotate through a 4 or 5 employment host sites for a shorter length of time than project search. The agency will request intensive training hours on a work incentive one time and offer a 1-to-2 staffing ratio. The new model will allow for 3 internship cycles per year, each one running 4 months in length, as opposed to the project search model, which is once a year and runs for 8 months. A focus in the hybrid program will be to assist people who currently make subminimum wage with job exploration and development of new employment skills. Initially, the provider will receive one-time funding to hire a consultant and develop the new internship curriculum. Initially, the provider plans to use a portion of their STEP incentives to hire a job developer who will directly oversee this program. Upon implementation, the program will be self-sufficient, relying on the established lawn rate funding structure and work incentive one-times. And for each person who obtains competitive employment, the provider will receive the correlating STEP incentives. And that is the overview of the work we're doing currently in the North region. So I will turn it over to David or John.
Thanks, Norman. I don't have anything written up. The West region has received 4 different transformational plans. One is a strictly residential plan, which includes 15 individuals currently living in CRS settings. The plan is to move these individuals into primarily IHS, but potentially CCH or shared living or clustered IHS type settings. They'll be utilizing remote supports, assistive technology, electronic face-to-face supports to enable these moves. They have about an 18-month time frame ending at the end of calendar year 2024. The next plan is a day plan with 15 individuals currently in primarily DSH, 1 person in transitional supports, 1 person in IDN. They plan on moving those individuals into ISE setting and 6 or so individuals into customized employment. The next plan is 2 individuals in DSH, moving them into ISE settings. And then the last plan is a combination of both day and res, 10 individuals from a DSH settings into ISE, and then 1 CLA individual into IHS. Primarily, all these plans plan to backfill a majority of the vacancies that they're going to create. There may be, with the large residential plan, there may be a consolidation of homes, but that's up for discussion. And that's all I have for the West region. David, all yours.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I do not have a write-up either, but what I'll do is I'll go through similar to what John did. So first thing I'll review is the total number of individuals that agencies as a sum have submitted to the South region that would potentially be transitioning from congregate res placement. So we have a total of 5 individuals that have been identified. And for those 5 individuals, 2 of the individuals, the agency is planning to develop a hybrid model. And for 3 of the individuals are being planned to be supported in IHS supportive housing. As far as whether any remote supports, assistive technology is being utilized in any of those plans, for the 2 individuals that are moving into that hybrid location, they will access both remote supports and assistive technology, along with those 3 individuals that are moving into the IHS supported housing. The next piece of it for the day portion, so part B, there are a total of 35 individuals that have been identified. out of those individuals, the base service type that they're currently receiving is GSH, DSH, and TSH. So group supported employment, DSO, and transition services. The service types that the agencies are planning to transition those individuals to is individualized day and transition, competitive employment, and ISE. One of the agencies in their plan is planning to increase the GS hours for 2 of the individuals. As far as whether or not remote supports or any other additional assistive technologies being used for 2 of the individuals, the agency is looking into project search, electronic face-to-face supports, and assistive technology. The other agencies are looking at project search, electronic face-to-face, remote supports, innovative employment opportunity grant. So there are quite a few of these different newer, I guess we could say newer support types that are going to be utilized. As far as any additional funding over the lawn allocations, there is one agency that does have some additional expenses above and beyond the lawn funding, which we are in discussion with that agency as we're doing the review. For one-time funding, there is one-time funding included in a couple of these plans, 2 of them for the providers that submitted Part A for residential. There are vacancy funding requests that are included in there for those vacancies that are going to open up from those individuals moving into a less congregate setting. And then so far for incentives, we have for res, there is 205,500, and for day there is 585,288. So I'd also like to say that, you know, we are still going through the review process with these plans, so there hasn't been any official award or approval agreement from the region yet for any of these. So we're still working with, well, I'm still working with one of the agencies on the budget and whatnot. So those numbers may change in the next week or 2. So that's what I'm seeing in the South region. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
I am not seeing questions in the chat, but I do know that that's been a question that we've gotten previously. Have plans been submitted? Where are they in process? Have any been approved? And so this update from the 3 regional administrators is incredibly helpful and hopefully stimulates some ideas as far as what might be possible. The way that this is being approached by different agencies. Our goal in sharing today is to just help to kind of prime the pump as far as what options are being considered, what type of plans are being submitted, and hopefully you found that helpful. All right, I don't see any questions. So thank you, David, Norman, and John. Our final presentation today is on remote supports. I am very happy to announce that Patricia Cimbala, who many of you may know, if you have any assistive technology initiatives that are in place. Patricia has been our ARPA lead over the last year and has worked with DDS, I'll say for over 25 years. I'll just say for over 25 years.
Thank you.
And has a master's degree in assistive technology and human services. And I'm very, very pleased to announce that Patricia has been promoted to Director of Assistive Technology. So I will turn it over to Patricia, who will share a little bit about remote supports.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about remote supports. I'm going to share my screen with you. I have a little presentation. So I'm sorry, but I can't. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, excellent. For some reason, I can't make the presentation the whole screen, because if I do, it'll go away. It'll go away. You won't be able to see it. So this is a great opportunity for me to talk about remote support. Remote supports and assistive technology is just something I love to talk about. I love to do. I love to research. It's a great thing. It's a great service. It is one that is happening across the country, and I'm privileged to meet with 23 other assistive technology directors and talk about how they are either getting into remote supports, they have been doing remote supports, or they've been doing remote supports for a while, and to start to hear about the successes. Just had a meeting yesterday with, it's called the National Technology Consortium, and we have someone in the committee that does a lot of research. They work for university, they do a lot of research, and they were saying that a lot of good things, you're seeing a lot of positive things coming out of remote supports. They're seeing providers starting to see a return on investment in remote supports. So let's get into it. I want to draw attention to the email address that you see at the bottom of this first page here, dds.remotesupports@ct.gov. That if you have a question about remote supports, please send it to that address, and the remote support committee will answer that. We'll answer your questions and get back to you. Okay, so please don't hesitate. If you have a question, please send it to that email address, and you'll see it again at the end. So I'm also doing this presentation with Amy Blazowski, and once I complete this, she'll start. Okay, so let's get into it. So what is remote support? Remote supports, it's a support that's provided by staff from a remote location using technology devices that have two-way communication capability. And that staff may be either scheduled, on demand, or in person that they usually will respond to an alert from a device used to provide the remote supports. So in the technology that can be used is motion sensing systems, radio frequency identification, live video and or audio feed, GSP tracking, they're web-based monitoring systems, and basically we're talking about devices that meet the requirements of two-way communication. So where can remote supports be provided? Remote supports can be provided in an individual's own home, their family home, in the community, at a job, or in an individual day support location, as long as no other waiver support is being provided at the time. When can remote supports be provided? So it can be provided during awake or overnight hours. They cannot be billed at the same time as other individual supports, such as IHS, personal supports, adult companion, blended supports, supported employment, individualized day, or hourly respite. And they also cannot be billed in 24-hour settings, such as a CCH, a CRS, or a CLA. Okay. Let's go to. So why remote supports? There's a lot of reasons why remote supports. Remote supports is just a great service, as I just mentioned. So it can increase an individual's, can increase or maintain an individual's independence, in their home and community with less reliance on staff or natural supports. It can also increase communication. It can increase communication with providers, caregivers, family members, friends. We saw this with a parent that started using remote supports, and they were thrilled, and they said they had more communication with their son now that they were using remote supports than they did prior to that. So individuals will also start to develop relationships in their communities and start partaking activities in their community. And that's a big plus. That's a big plus. Remote supports, it can increase individuals' ability to just exercise choice and to have that control over their everyday lives. All of these positive things are in protecting an individual's health and safety in the least intrusive manner. So moving towards independence, it all starts with a conversation. That was said at a meeting yesterday, at the consortium meeting yesterday, and it's so true. It really is. People will be in different stages as far as their journey on remote supports and their journey towards independence. And some will be remote support ready. And these people will have said, okay, I'm ready for remote supports. They'll show that they have the skills and readiness to do remote supports, and they'll be open to the technology. And when they move, they will have the technology put in at the same time as when they move. You'll also have people that are transitioning. These people will choose to do remote supports, but they may have to learn some skills and develop some prior to actually moving. And this technology will be put in place where they are living currently. And then when they move, the technology will move with them. We have different assistive technology initiatives going on right now that will assist in increasing an individual's ability to access technology to help them with transportation or to explore different employment options. So look forward to those. And I'm really excited about that because technology is moving so quickly, and the technology that we have right now can really start to help individuals in those particular things. So let's go into remote support terminology. We created these terms here, remote support. So I'm going to go over each of them. This presentation is available. As you can tell, each slide has each definition. I'm just going to go over them fairly quickly. So virtual support partner. A virtual support partner, it's a person such as an agency or qualified provider, or an unpaid support person, such as a family member, a friend, or other natural support that provides the virtual support. And obviously from a remote location, and they'll be using the technology system that's been designed specifically for that person. This is a very person-centered process. Remote support technology system. It's a technology that facilitates and provides a remote support service. The system can be a wireless technology and or a phone line to link the individual's home to the virtual support partner that's offsite. And the system sensors can also be used, and they would send real-time data to the virtual support partner, who is immediately available to access in the situation and provide assistance according with the in-person response plan. So, remote support supplier, basically the entity that is responsible to set up the customized remote support technology system necessary. And it's based upon the individual's needs, as I just said. This entity may additionally provide real-time virtual remote, maybe a real-time virtual remote support partner as well. They have the capability, they could be both. On-call backup entity. It's the entity that is responsible for the on-call service. The on-call service is the backup entity that receives a notification from the virtual support partner or from the remote technology directly, that's what it's designed to do, to indicate to a person that an in-person intervention is necessary. The on-call backup entity will then contact the identified person to provide the in-person support. We have the on-demand in-person support. It is the direct face-to-face support that's provided by the staff when they're sent to the individual's location as requested by the individual or the virtual support partner, or in response to an electronic device indicating that support is needed at that time. And the in-support may be a natural support. It could be a self-hired direct support professional, remote support professional, remote direct support professional, which would be awesome, or through a paid agency. If the on-call support is it's a paid agency or provider, the backup response it's got to be identified before services are rendered. The on-demand in-person support staff will be paid at the IHS rate, and then it'll be at 15-minute intervals for all direct support provided. in-person response plan. This is a plan created by the individual's team and providers that identifies who or what entity will serve as the on-call support. Obviously, the individual will be very involved in this process as well. The plan also has to be very detailed in at least one backup. There needs to be at least one backup respondent, and the expectations need to be known as to when that person's going to get there. There is maximum 30 minutes in order for the person to get there in case of an emergency. As I mentioned, all of the slides here, I will provide you with this, and all of the terminology is here. I also want to bring your attention to the notice of opportunity that's out right now. It mentions remote supports on it. So there is funding available for remote supports. If you as a provider decide that you want to start doing remote supports, which is a really good idea. I'm seeing so many success stories across the country. It's thrilling. It really is. I was watching a video the other day where an individual was saying, you know, I didn't want to live with my parents anymore, and I didn't want to have strangers in my house all the time. With this DSB crisis, it really resonated with me, because with this DSB crisis, yes, he probably is seeing a lot more strangers in his house. So he was using remote supports, and he was thrilled. He was happy to use them. So there's a lot of really good things happening right now. If anybody has any questions on remote supports, please call me. My information is here on the slide. I'll probably talk your ear off, but please give me a call. I get excited when I talk about this stuff. So be prepared. Okay. Thank you very much. Amy Blazowski will now be speaking. I will stop sharing my screen, Amy, okay?
Thanks, Patricia. I'm going to actually share my screen now so that I can get my PowerPoint on. Oh, just give me one moment. And I'm going to go. And much like Patricia said, I'm gonna just kind of do a half screen here so that I can still see myself. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes. Yep. I
We
can see
can. It's small though.
It's small. Okay, let me. Is that better?
I can see it. Can others see it?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So thanks, Patricia, and big congratulations to Patricia. I know that she's going to change the landscape of how services look for the people that we support. So congratulations. My name's Amy Blaze. I'm Director of Services Development and Supports, or Self-Determination Director. I just wanted to go over a little bit about how we are going to look at getting remote support started, the team process, some creative solutions, and basically what we're looking at in terms of the future of rolling out remote supports and getting people engaged in the process, having them have a better foundation of how to do it. So Patricia went through some of these definitions, so I'm kind of going to skip through. I'm going to come back after and show a brief video, but I wanted to just highlight some of the things that we've been talking about in terms of getting started. So the solution circle is one avenue that we feel can assist people in getting remote support started. I'm going to speak from more of a team process, self-determination point of view here. So I just wanted to define a solution circle. It's basically a tool that can generate ideas, problem solving, just basically through a collaborative approach. You've probably heard of Peerpoint and colleagues. This is where the solution circle idea came from. And it's just, you know, to generate ideas to solve a problem. So here's a little bit about how we'd like to go forward. Everybody is going to be integral in these person-centered planning meetings, right? So case management, providers, other interdisciplinary staff like OTs, AT professionals, PT, transition advisors. What we're going to do is look for about 4 cases from each region, you know, varying in age, what people's goals are. It might be independence, mobility, safety, travel, vision, communication, hearing. And then also provide a general curriculum and some training where we're defining what remote supports are, as Patricia just did, defining roles of the participants within the solution circles, looking at some of the process ideas and the tools and forms that we're going to use in order to get that process started. Looking at the participant or the person-centered team responsibilities and their expectations in what they want to see happen. And then also, you know, marketing. So making sure that people know what remote supports are and inviting them into a learning type atmosphere. This could be joint learning. So like vicarious problem solving, we can all learn simply from being present at these meetings. So we're just kind of sitting in and watching a solution be found. We plan to have you know, built-in technology, you know, tech support through the team process, which means, you know, the team can give, and when I mean the team, I mean the greater facilitation of the solution circle. So referrals, resources, ongoing consultation, that's going to be the real draw, I think, because you're going to have somebody sort of helping you along with a whole brainstorm team to sort of get the process going. And then obviously the deliverables are that successful implementation and the use of the service and supports that go with remote supports. So I just wanted to go through quickly some of the tools that we use, that we're planning to use. This is just sort of a you know, a high level. We want to educate. We have to see people through that planning process. And then there's also the allocations, authorizations that need to be requested as well. So, and I'm going to go through quickly here. One of the first tools that we use is the "Are Remote Supports Right for Me?" And what I've done here is just I've kind of taken the most salient pieces of this document and plopped them in here just so that you can see sort of what the document would look like. So here, you know, you're actually looking at, is the person ready? Is the team ready to engage and embark into this planning process to use remote supports? So you want to look at if there are any risks, or, you know, what we do embrace value-based decision making. That's sort of the replacement term for dignity of risk. So you know, we're looking at all of the planning and support team members to be present and focused on how the person can benefit. We want obviously some team collaboration, the case manager looking at, helping with the facilitation of all of this. I'm going to move on here. And then there's a short checklist. And these are sort of what you might expect in a document of, is this right for me, right? How are they going to benefit? Will they benefit with adequate guidance and training? Or are we going to be able to use this with, independence? Safety is always a concern. And are there other people that are going to be within the mix that may be affected? So, and then from there, if we decide that that is indeed a possibility for the person and that it may be an option, we can then move to the remote supports checklist. So this is a little bit different because it's actually not just an assessment of, are remote supports right for me, but now we've moved to the place where we're saying, okay, we're going to move forward, and these are this is the model that we're going to use to guide us. So here again, we have another little checklist. We're explaining, we're working with the team. We've already done is remote supports right for me, the tool. We are recommending this as a service option, and we have the resources in place to do so through our PrEP process. The PST has identified, what kind of technology may meet the needs of the person. And we're looking at identifying those terms that Patricia actually defined earlier around the VS partner, the on-call backup, and the remote support technology supplier. And then we always go back to the person-centered plan and making sure that that everything is well documented. So here we're asking some questions around, who are we going to be using? And what's the relationship to that individual? Contact people and all of those fairly, expected questions that would be asked. The remote support technology supplier, we ask very similar questions. And then we also ask, is the virtual support partner and the supplier the same entity? Because technically that could be the case. And then we have the systems, right? So technology systems, that's the actual technology that's going to drive that remote support service. Then we go to looking at the products that would be needed. So we're looking at hardware, software, and again, going back to definition, what is assistive technology? It's, a piece of equipment, product, service, system that's going to assist the person not only, in the text of autonomy, but to run the actual remote support service. Excuse me. And just as a aside, we always add here that, any of these remote supports or assistive technology pieces of equipment or products may be subject to an HRC review. We look at internet connectivity. How is that secured? Because we need to be able to run the system. And then also look at identifying remote support service times. We always need an in-person response plan. And this is identified by the team and the providers that are engaged. And it actually identifies who that entity will be to serve as the on-call support. And then again, you have more little checklists here. And this is really around the on-call supports that actually provide that on-demand in-person support when it's needed. And you're just identifying who those entities may be, whether they're natural supports, they're direct hires, they're you know, the remote direct support professional or a paid agency. And then finally, you know, there can be a backup to the on-call support. And just quickly, I wanted to run a video. Elisa, do I have time to run that video? Okay, well,
Sign off.
I'm sorry?
I recognize that some people need to sign off, but if you want to run the video, those that can stay on are welcome to. And I don't see any questions in the chat. I did see a request for the presentations, and we will provide those.
Okay, great. So I'll just, I just have 3 slides here, and then I can run the video for those of you that might want to see it. I wanted to add just these couple slides on provider qualifications, because this is very important when it comes to onboarding providers of remote supports. So I'm going to identify some support categories in the next 2 slides, but you know, this is sort of you know, just the preliminary things here. And so here, and you'll get a copy of this. So this just kind of gives an idea of, you know, the virtual support partner. What are we looking for when we're qualifying an agency? And, you know, I'm not going to go through all of this now, but there's also another slide for the on-call backup entity. So those 2 functions of remote supports, you know, there are some qualifying stipulations here. And that's pretty much it for my portion. And I'll just go ahead and run the video if you'd like to stick around.